So, hello out there. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be joining us from. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Annette Richmond. This is the second episode of the Trend Talk Show, and I'm so excited to have Ed Hahn and Tom Powner and Mary Despe here with me. I've known them all, and I'm meeting most of them for the first time right now. So, um, let's get started. For anyone who doesn't know you, first, everybody out there, if you are there, please do say hello and tell us where you're joining from, just so we know that everything is kind of up and running and you can hear us. So let's start with, well, we should go ladies first. So Mary, why don't you start, and then we'll go around to Tom, and Ed, if you can tell us a little bit about you for anyone who doesn't know you already.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Despe. I am a recruitment consultant and career coach based here on the island of Oahu in Hawaii, and super happy to be here chatting about my favorite topic.
Cool.
And I guess it's my turn.
It's your turn. Go ahead.
Compounder coming from Fort Lauderdale right now, but also in New York. Kind of have two places I work out of. I started Career Thinker about 12 years ago. I kind of quit the grind of corporate America. I look back now, I wouldn't change a thing, or maybe make money sooner. But I have a career service company, and I do third-party recruiting. I had 3 recruiters on my team. We recruit for 4 to 5 national companies, human resources, sales, and business operations. And that's what we do.
Okay.
So I guess that's me. So hi,
Yeah.
everyone. My name's Ed Hahn. I'm a recruiter. I bill myself as a wordsmith. And I'm what like to describe as a job seeker ally. I'm not a career coach. That's not what I do. Annette is a career coach. She's real good at it. And as are Tom and Mary here. That's not my thing. What I do what pays my bills is being a recruiter. But because of that, what that has meant is I get to have a lot of conversations with a lot of hiring managers and read a lot of resumes, hear a lot of after action reports from interviews. And I like to use that information to help job seekers do better, have shorter searches. So my name's Ed, and I'm here to help you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I will say that I know all of you share great information on LinkedIn. So I also want to say hi to a couple of people in our audience. So hello, Brenda, who is joining us from Canada. Happy to have you here. And our mutual buddy, Kenneth Lang. Thanks so much for joining us. It's great to have you here as well. So let's jump right in, and we'll get right to it. As I mentioned, we were chatting a little bit before we started, that the jobs report was really quite interesting that came out on Friday. The idea that the jobs added was a little bit less, less than the month before. I mean, it was 315,000 compared to 526 in July, but still, was considered strong. Yet the unemployment rate ticked up. I mean, only 0.2%, but still it did tick up. And I was listening to something, it was actually an NPR interview, and with their Scott Horsley, their chief economics correspondent, and he was saying that the reason for this is because so many people re-entered or entered the workforce, and they're now looking. So what are your thoughts on that before we jump in and I ask you about some other stuff? Ed, you want to start?
Sure. So I think there's a couple things happening here, right? Obviously, there are some of these economic forces at work here, but let's also remember that we're talking about this having been summer, that in that quarter that we're talking about, during which a lot of hiring slows because decision makers just aren't there. They're taking some of that time off that they want to make use of, right? School's been out, kids have had a particularly tough tough school year, and they want to be treated. They and parents want to treat them, right? So I think that it is normal to expect that quarter to end with a, not as strong as the one immediately before. Um, that's kind of my read of it.
Okay. And Mary, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with all of that. I think seasonally, it's that time of year where it's still early enough in the fall that people are hiring, but it is a unique situation because the market seems to be a little bit slower. I know that companies are really, instead of just going direct to market to find talent, they're also building and capitalizing on their different relationships and talent pipelines that they have either internally or with other groups, and really just picking and choosing given the climate that we're in. I think there's an air of caution. So I know that there are definitely companies that say, oh, we're hiring, but we're going to take it a little slow, maybe hire 1 or 2 positions now for the quarter or the next month or so, and then see how it goes according to the rest of the forecast later on.
Okay. And your thoughts, Tom?
Well, I'm finding more people coming back into the job market. What's happening now, daycare is starting to come back. The biggest challenge for a lot of parents, where both parents were working for the past 2 years, one was staying home, whether it was a husband or a wife, or both husbands or both wives, to be politically correct. So daycare is coming back because there's been no daycare for the most part. Summer programs are now ending. And then a lot of people that just kind of were scared and stayed inside, and now popping head out and coming back. Even my building, I have 2 people who live in my building that has not been out of the apartment for almost 2 years, and all of a sudden they're coming out. So you got a lot of people just shifting back to, I don't know what normal means anymore, but shifting back to what used to be. So I do see things changing and coming a little bit more back to normal as far as people getting back into the job force.
Yeah, well, thank you for not saying the new normal. We kept saying, through the pandemic, like every 6 months, this is the new normal, and then it would shift and it would be something else, another new normal but we're moving into a different phase. So one of the things that I read, and I read it recently, I'm sure you all have too, but they focused a lot on the 2022 work trend index, that Microsoft did on LinkedIn. I think it was back in March that it came out.
Yep.
And they were talking a lot about how candidates, job seekers, that their priorities have shifted. And I've read other articles about this as well. And that now, money is not necessarily their highest priority. So many people are in the poll that they did, 53% of employees, 55% parents, and women 56% said they were liable to really prioritize their well-being over work. Family is just more important to them now. So as people are easing back, as Tom was just saying, now Derek cares back, and so people are able to get back to the office. What are you seeing as far as this goes? Mary, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. I know that the candidates that I talk to, I mean, money, of course, will always be important. But, a lot of the questions now that people ask me on behalf of companies is like, tell me about the work-life balance, plan that you guys have there. Tell me more about wellness and just what is the overall point of view of the organization and what can we do. And really just the last few years of being in the pandemic, I mean, we've all, lived the test case that how we were living before. We've had to adapt and really make time for ourselves, whether we wanted to or not. It was forced on us, and we have adapted to this situation, and it's become part of our life and our lifestyle. So it's something that I see more of, that people are not compromising. They'd rather just kind of, continue with a good thing if they have a good thing, and seek out employers that support that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that too. So, Tom, I'm going to ask you to go next because you recruit all in the healthcare industry, right? That's one of your areas.
No, no, not the
Oh,
healthcare
I'm sorry.
industry, but you know, the thing that money doesn't matter anymore. They want everything and the money. So I'm not seeing people they, oh, I'll take 20,000 less. They are really demanding a work from home environment, and even a hybrid approach. You know, work from home local is becoming very popular. Companies will hire you if you're a certain distance from the corporate office because they want you to come in once or twice a month. But people are just want to work from home. I just finished a consulting gig with a company, and we had to identify which positions we can make remotely because the past year they had so much turnover. People would take a job and quit in 2 months or 2 weeks because they didn't want to travel into the office. So we identified like 162 jobs that could be done remotely. So companies that have to change the way of thinking. I don't know how long this is going to last. I'm not sure if it's. I personally think work from remote 100% is not as healthy as people think. I've been doing it for years, and I miss people. I miss hugs. I miss handshakes. I miss laughter. So I don't know if it's good for us long term, but people want work from home environment, and they want the money, and they want all the benefits that come with it. That's what I'm saying.
So, Ed, you look like you're bursting with thoughts there.
I have I have a lot of thoughts. I'm sure you're surprised to hear that. Uh, largely, I'm echoing what Mary and Tom have already said, though. Look, my big competitive advantage when I am trying to poach someone from another organization is, oh, I've read in the news that this employer is doing RTO. Hello, you've just rung a dinner bell for me. Okay, that's what's happening when companies announce that they're doing RTO. All of their competitors say, "Oh, okay, thank you. I'm going to contact all of your people now." And
Yeah.
because why wouldn't we? If your organization isn't, you have a competitive advantage, and it's a massive one. There are a very large number of people who have vulnerable population. Vulnerable people in their homes are themselves a vulnerable populace, uh, and some of folks are driving farther than they had before. Some folks have relocated entirely during the last 2.5 years. But let's also remember that the past 2.5 years, if you have been working continuously in the same place for the last 2.5 years, right? You went through the initial horror of summer of 2020 when everyone
Mm.
practically was at least riffing or furloughing significant amounts of their teams. So what did that do to everybody that was left? Well, guess what? This amount of work doesn't suddenly compress down to this amount of work,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
On the contrary, it expanded, right? Because there's fewer people to do it now and fewer people proficient in doing it. So everything took longer. And so all those people were sick and tired of that. And that's where the great resignation came from, to my way of thinking. And I think we're continuing to see that trend, that impatience for being in the minds of many employees taken advantage of.
Yeah, I hear that too, and I'm interested because I read that too. That was one of the things that they focused a lot about in that work trends report. The idea of, and I think it was right around the 50%. It was sort of 50
Mhm,
50 divided with employers saying, okay, now back to the office, that everybody back to the office.
mhm.
And, and I would imagine that that would be a real shakeup because not only is the flexibility, but as you were saying, the idea that people are, concerned about themselves or their families at home. A lot of people live in multi-generational homes. So what do y'all think about that? Are you seeing that too? Just
Well, see, oh, seeing what? I lost the question.
the whole idea of people, when they're wanting to, they don't want to go back to the office, that it's really
Right.
unsettling.
It's the workplace revolution of 2022. I mean, people are just refusing. You know, even when I interview someone and I tell them it's in the office job because I hire a lot of salespeople that have to go out and see clients. They'll go through the whole interview process, and when it comes to the offer, they said, "Well, I want this to be remote now," and they're just turning down great job offers because it's a revolution in my mind. and they don't seem to be swaying. I'm not sure. Again, like I said before, I'm not sure how long this is going to last, but this is where we are right now.
So, Mary, do you think that employers are going to respond to that and go, more virtual or hybrid? I know I have a good friend that works at Gartner, and they have a huge campus just one town over from where I live. And she told me that they are now a virtual first company. That's their standard, virtual first. And they actually sold one of their buildings because they just don't have people coming in there all the time. So, do you think there might be any shift in that, towards that way of thinking, Mary?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the industries and yeah, just the company philosophy on that. But I know, I work with a lot of tech and consulting candidates, and virtual first is the way to go. I mean, that's what it is. And some of the clients and companies, they have been selling office space off or reconfiguring it for more social events and training and not so much day-to-day work type of stuff. But I mean, I think it's in the industries that I work with, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's almost a given. And that, like, going into the office, I mean, occasionally you'll hear it from people who say that they want to, but I think it's virtual first from my experience.
I can imagine that. Tom, you were saying that you're lonely. Now, I love working from home. I've worked from home for a really long time and I love it. My husband, on the other hand, hates it. So he takes every opportunity to go out and see clients that he can. So Tom, Ed, you're looking like you're ready to share some more.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
No, please.
It's what's funny to me about this experience, right, is that I'm a corporate guy, and my organization is sunsetting one of the buildings that they're in, because there simply isn't enough demand. They have the top leadership has said hybrid is going to be our way future. Uh, and that is the way it is. We had historically been a more or less 100% on-site shop.
Mhm.
So, when you have several thousands of employees, and who are no longer showing up, then, you want to kind of, that's a capital expense, right? And you want to eliminate those things when you can.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, I live very close to my office. I'm like 10 or 15 minutes, depending on the traffic, right? Um, so for me, it's not a big deal to go in. And I also prefer seeing people in person every now and again. Tom, I completely hear you when you say a little lonely, right? I mean, we spent, better part of a year at least not actually seeing any of these people that we had been working, shoulder to shoulder with all this time. Um, I volunteered to start working on a hybrid basis as part of a pilot program, and now we are officially making that transition organization wide. It's kind of interesting to see what parts of the workforce are open to that and what parts of the workforce are not as open.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, some jobs you have to be there. I spent years in the restaurant business where you can't have, work from home and be a bartender. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. At least not yet. Maybe someday, but not yet. So I see you laughing there, Tom. Um, but I'm curious also, and you were talking about this, the idea that it's people leaving, and I've heard from from recruiters, some of them here, that people are quitting. I mean, they're leaving before they even finish out the time before the recruiter is going to get paid for that. And I saw something that the Muse did a survey on their website, which is a job search site, and 72% of the 2,500 workers that they polled said that they were surprised or regret something that they're in their new job and they're ready to kind of move on. So they're calling it shift shock. So what do y'all think about that? I mean, the idea that people thought, oh, the grass is greener, great resignation. I'm not happy here. They're overworking me. And I'm gonna leave and try something new. And now they're unhappy.
Yeah, I've seen quite a bit of that. And Ed said something earlier about people being impatient with their current employer. And, they've been doing the work of two people while we go through this whole transition and stuff. And I've had many clients that actually, with my help, found a new job. But by the time they got hired, like I had one national sales account manager. He's supposed to have 42 salespeople report to him. He didn't ask the right questions. There was 20 people missing when he was being interviewed, and by the time he got on board, there was another 15 people. So he had 35 open hires. How could he succeed with all that newness and him being a new company and had to hire these people? And I've heard these type of stories over and over. So the grass might seem greener, but when you get on board, people above you, people below you are just missing. And then how do you fill that gap in when you're a new employee or new leader of a company?
Okay.
So that's been seeing quite a bit of that.
Okay. Other thoughts on that? Feel free to jump right in. We're all friendly here.
Well, I'll say, I mean, I would agree. Like, I think that there's this level of patience that people, I don't know, maybe it's changed a bit in the last few years in the workforce. Like, the patience period is smaller and smaller, I feel. But I also think that, there is a lot of fueling of higher pay, like as the motivation for leaving. I mean, yes, following and pursuing your life dream and taking time off, all of those things are true. But let's face it, a lot of candidates are, a quick way to boost your salary is to jump. And I know with certain generations of people in the workforce now, it's much more common to leave. And, do they regret it? Yeah, probably, because sure, they might have the pay increase, but like all the other dynamics that make a satisfactory workplace and the fulfillment that they hope to be making and the impact, is it there? Maybe you got to stick around. I don't know. I think personally, I feel like the impatience level, I think, Tom, you nailed it completely. Like, I feel like there's a lot of that going on, but yeah, that's just what I see.
I agree with both what Tom and Mary just said here. My experience with this has been so in 21, if you're a recruiter with even a modicum of experience, you had people throwing gobs and gobs of money at you. It was absolutely insane. I fielded one call. Someone was offering to practically double my salary if I would report on site in downtown Manhattan.
Oh.
No, I have done this commute before. I do not wish to do it again, even for that kind of money. I can't. No, the time is too much. That the value of my time is too high for even that.
Mhm.
But I know a lot of recruiters who did make it to that kind of transition last year, and then here we are, Q1, Q2 rolled around, and a lot of shops there was a bit of a bloodletting there, right? And even if there wasn't, they probably have implemented certain belt tightening measures at the very least,
Mhm.
right? Maybe it's not a hiring freeze, but it's a hiring cool, right? Like, we're only going to do backfills now instead of hiring for strength or
Mhm.
capacity. It's a very strange space that we're in right now, and I think that a lot of it, because there's still a lot of unknowns, right? With major employers riffing, major employers announcing hiring freezes. We all heard about the offer rescinds that were seemingly everywhere a month or two ago, right? There's obviously a lot of anxiety at the upper management levels regarding what the future holds.
So I'm curious because another one of the questions that they asked on that Muse survey would people try to get their old jobs back? And 48% of people who responded to that said yes, they would try to get their old. So how do you think that will go over? Do you think people will be able to go back to their former employer, or you're laughing, Ed? So what are you thinking? No,
If you don't mind,
no, please.
I think that the answer to this question is really dependent on how did they exit, right? Did they decide to get it all off their chest in their exit interview? That's probably not going to go great in terms of boomeranging, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but by the same token, half of my placements, half my hires in the last 6 weeks have been boomerangs. You know,
Oh, okay.
so that this has actually worked out really well. Now it happens that I hire chiefly technology people and also sometimes HR people. So the HR people, they know the deal, right? When we exit, we know don't burn
Hmm.
bridges, don't be saying anything stupid, and leave the door open because we never know when we're going to encounter these people again.
Yeah.
You know, um, and hopefully that information, that awareness has been more broadly disseminated across the workforce. I'm not sure how to what extent, but for those folks who want to make that effort, who also did it in ways that allow the organization to say, yeah, welcome back, open arms, we've missed you, right? Those are always good stories to be able to tell people. I mean, what better testament is there to your employer brand than people left and came back?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I didn't think about that. So, Tom, what's been your experience with, with the candidates and the clients that you work with?
I think Ed hit it on the head. It's really how you left the company, and even some people that left abruptly and stuff are still welcome back. And again, if the position's still open and it still needs you, they know your brand, the company's brand. Definitely, why not? But a lot of people don't take that route. I'm surprised half of what you did. A lot of people don't see that as an option. I always coach my clients on that's definitely an option. You were happy, you were unhappy for a little while, and so sometimes how many times we break up and we're going to get a divorce, but we don't. So it's human nature. I mean, so what's the difference? So I say more power if it's the right choice. It shouldn't be out of desperation. It should be the right choice. And typically when people do go back, they are making more money than they left. So
So what is it that quit and then come back and you make more money?
in
That
many
sounds cool.
cases, it's not a strategy that I recommend doing, but it's definitely something that happens often. So
So, Mary, you look like you're ready to jump in.
Oh, I mean, I would agree with both Ed and Tom. I mean, it's all in the way that you handle yourself, I feel like with any relationship, be it with an employer, be it with whomever, old friend that you had a falling out with, whatever. I mean, I think, yeah, like I really just think that if it's part of just your code, right? Like how you treat people professionally. This can extend to maybe not being happy with where you're at, or you've acknowledged you've reached the limit, but then maybe time away can help. And like, oh no, you went somewhere else and you're regretting it. We've all been in those situations where it's like, shoot, can I ask if I can have a second chance, whatever the situation is? So why not with your employer? And I really do think though, I mean, this is independent of generation, age, whatever backgrounds. I really feel that if you don't have the professionalism mindset, from what you bring to work set, and you're coached on that and you're aware of it, then like it's likely that you're never going to have like a chance to come back. But I would agree with these guys.
So I want to ask you one question before we turn to the whole quiet quitting thing, because I'm really curious to hear your thoughts about that. We were talking about it a little bit, before we went on air. But one of the things that I found when I worked in corporate, which I did for, quite a long time, and the two worst jobs I ever had were when I went for the interview. I didn't feel like something wasn't right. The one of them was I got my degree, and I just got my degree in English, and I was trying to get a job like at a magazine or in advertising. And I was interviewing with this small sort of advertising boutique advertising company. And the owner, who would be my boss, it was interviewing me. He was late. He wasn't really, he was kind of rude. And but they offered me the job and I took it because I wanted to get into the industry so badly. And I have said this many times to people. I think I lasted like 6 weeks, and I just didn't, called and said, I'm not coming in today. And oh, by the way, I'm not ever coming back. So that was, and I was younger then, so I will excuse myself, by saying that. But how do you know? And you've all kind of touched on this a little bit. about knowing the company and knowing what the company is like? How do you know? I mean, what can you do to try to know anyway?
Well, today we have so many different tools to do some research. Years ago, we didn't do research. Today you have LinkedIn. You could actually reach out to past people that did your role. You could look at Glassdoor. There's a lot of blogs out there. You could do your research and kind of get some type of vibe of how the company is, how they treat the employees. I think LinkedIn is the most amazing tool that came out in the past 20 years to help people. So I coach my clients, who did your job in the past, whether it's 5 or 10 years ago, reach out to them, see how they were treated, see how they were promoted, see if their raises really did happen. Do your homework. So a lot of people don't. A lot of people spend more time planning a 3-day weekend than planning their career. So it's out there. It's just you have to do the work to find information. That's my point of view.
Okay.
I agree with what Tom said. I that analogy about planning a 3-day weekend more than planning their careers, so apt, so on point. Couldn't agree more about that. And it's unfortunate too, right? I mean, we all know that we have bills to pay. We know we have years of bills to pay, right? We have, in most cases, we have mortgages and things like that. We know that this is kind of important, right? But we also know that on some level, there's a cultural bias against being professionally minded. That's not cool, right? And we all know that's a little true. When you're out with friends, you celebrate your win, and then you tell your success story. That's great. Okay, let's talk about more fun stuff, right? This is kind of not exactly unusual. So, focus. So I think that people are a little bit disincented to be career minded because there's these little social cues that, people don't really talk about this stuff. I guess I won't think about it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that too, that people, they don't plan a lot. I was talking to somebody about this not too long ago. And what do you find with the people that you work with, Mary? Are they, on sort of a path? Because you you recruit for some, kind of high powered companies. And so is that something where people are wanting to go work there because it's part of a plan, or are you finding, as they've been saying, that people are just like, yeah, let's go here now. No, okay, that sounds good. Let's go over there.
I mean, there are definitely people who don't plan, and it's just like they're just going on like what's been mentioned already, or it's really not, registering, to like do the due diligence that you need to do with your career, or even like where you're planning to go or anything like that. But I would say for, candidates that really want to know, and they're, being very earnest in their search, they're gonna do all the questions and all the things that, both Ed and Tom mentioned. I mean, it's every person that they're interviewing with asking questions, like, well, the whys. So why is this role open? Why are you hiring? Like, what's the worst day that you've ever faced? Whatever, I mean, getting, rolling up your sleeves and really getting to the questions, and then also doing your legwork outside of the interview with people, in your network that know and can shed some light. So at least you can make that decision, an informed choice. I mean, I've always said too, that like, you should really diversify your sources so that you build your intelligence, thoroughly, that it's not just looking on Glassdoor, that it's not just talking to your one friend that maybe knew the thing or getting the word from the hiring manager. It's also like reading, it's also understanding what the company's vision is, like looking at company reports, filings, hearing what's in the news to really frame a bigger picture. And so, I mean, it's just funny to me because, a lot of people don't do the work, and it's silly because you're going to be spending a lot of time there. So you would think that you kind of put some thought to it.
So before we move on, I just want a yes or no answer. And we'll start with Ed, Tom, and then Mary. Should you, if things don't feel right, should you trust your gut and not accept the job? So what do you say? Yes or no?
Trust your gut. Yes.
Trust your gut. Tom?
I got a big gut. I trust my gut.
Yeah, I say trust your gut.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Those are the worst jobs I ever had. Didn't trust my gut. So, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, and this is sort of like the, big thing that I hear everybody talking about right now, and it's the whole idea of the quiet quitting. And I've read different descriptions of this in various articles, and this is one that really always just stood out to me. Disengaged employees just doing their job and no more, won't respond to emails after hours or work on weekends. So um now, to me, and I understand there are times when you got to hustle. I mean, there are times when I worked at a magazine. Sometimes we had to work longer hours, but to some degree, it sounds like they're doing their job. And, I think I had mentioned to you all, I just read a Gallup study. It just came out. It was done in June, I believe. And they surveyed 15,000 full time and part time workers in the US, and 50% of the respondents met the definition of quiet quitters. So, what do y'all think about that? I mean, is it being penalized because you don't want to work 24/7, so you're a quiet quitter, or what?
I don't think it's anything new. I think you always have a group of people that did the 9 to 5 that left the office. I think it's easy to do quiet quitting, whatever you want to call it, when you work remotely. And then on the flip side, I think a lot of people work a lot more hours. They take their commute time and they add it to the workday. I think this is just news trying to just put something out there, to be perfectly honest. Um, you know, um, some people are just doing, and again, when you're in the office and your boss is next to you in the office and you want to leave at 5 o'clock, sometimes you feel a little guilty, so you put that extra hour in. So we don't have these outside things impacting what we do in our workday. And again, you have family at home, and again, it's easy to shut your laptop down and walk away for some people. So I don't think it's anything new. I just think we're shifting the term around.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Other thoughts?
I kind of am conflicted about this phenomenon because there was a time not that long ago where coming in 9, leaving at 5 was considered normal,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
That and what we've seen, I think, consistently since the beginning of lockdowns has been people realizing they need to prioritize self-care. People realizing that they need to establish boundaries because they need not just for their own sanity, but also just because of their personal commitments and their family lives, right? I mean, it's very hard to be a good spouse, good parent, good sibling, if you are working some of the hours we had gotten accustomed to working, right? But you're still physically there in this space, and it's not like you don't know these things are happening around you.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm a little frustrated by the term because I think there's been a lot of fetishization of hustle culture, you know. And look, I'm not against someone having what do they call it, a side hustle now. That's what we've
Hmm.
been calling it now for the last half decade,
Yep.
right? We used to call it moonlighting, right?
Yeah, new term. Yeah.
Um, and look, I've got nothing against that. If you want to do that, more power to you, right? But thinking that everyone needs to hustle is intrinsically, I think, problematic. It because there's no other way to put it. It fetishizes hustle culture, and that I think is potentially very dangerous for people.
No, I agree with you. And it used to be the person who came in early and stayed late was the go-getter, the someone, people would do that to, get cited for promotion or something like that. And now it's like, I don't know, you have to work what, 24/7 to be the one who's really the go-getter. So Mary, I see you smiling there. What do you think about all this?
Yeah, to be honest, when I heard that term quiet quitting, I was like, really? Are we talking about this? Because, Tom, I'm with you. I was like, what is this? Like, this is nothing new. I mean, it's like putting boundaries. I think what's interesting, I think what makes for interesting conversation about this whole thing with hustle culture and all of that, I think, well, if doing what you want to do for your job and, doing the whatever required or minimum functions of the job, that's just fine. But it would be interesting to see companies, like, who are they rewarding, right? Like with promotions, with pay, with this and that. Like, is it people who are quiet quitting, or are they, and they're setting their boundaries and they're doing a good job getting things done and maybe a little more? Or is it still the people who are progressing are the ones that are not quiet quitting and obviously making these actions to move forward and like do the extra? I know personally, I think it's really good to set boundaries. I know earlier in my career, I was never good at that at all. I'm a recovering workaholic is what I like to tell people. But at the same time, I know like it's not enough to just like do the minimum if you want to go anywhere. I mean, that's just my take. I think like if you need to do extra to get there, you're going to do it. But, quiet quitting, I mean, hooray. But at the same time, I don't think
Well,
is.
I mean, there's what I said and what Ed said is kind of a little bit of the opposite, But when I worked in corporate America, I led some really huge teams, multiple locations, and I would reward the people that were more dedicated. And did they have to work 16 hours? No, but they put a couple of hours, 5-6 hours a weekend. And someone who quiet quit, whether it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it hasn't changed. Those people did the bare minimum. Why would I reward them with a promotion or a big raise or a great rating on their performance review? That's just the way I look at it. I mean, I come from a strong work ethic. I'm not saying these people don't have work ethic, but those people that do the bare minimum to get by, then I'm on my hit list for promotion. I'm just saying.
So, I appreciate everything that you all are saying, but I'm old enough that I remember working before we had cell phones, before we had email. And when you left the job, I mean, yes, I was working in a magazine at that time. I think I had email, but like nobody did, just because my husband's like a geek like that. But you know, we would stay late when it was necessary, but when you went home, you went home. And, the weekends, yes, sometimes you would come in, you'd have to come in and work, but it just seems to be like it's just a thing now where that's just what it is, that it's expected. And I think that's what makes people angry or resentful. I know it, did to me, is when it's expected.
Well, I think that's a leadership problem. Like my husband, he does not answer any email on the weekends or on vacation. He totally shuts down, and he lets his boss know that. His boss doesn't send him any emails on the weekend, yet his boss sends him other people emails because they respond or they get back. So I think it becomes a leadership thing. And when I was leading teams, I always set my emails to go out on Monday morning, even though I worked on a Saturday morning for 4 hours. So I think as leaders, we need to control how we communicate to our staff. So that's my point of view.
Tom, I'm so glad you said that, because that is such a great point. That you need to model the behavior you want your team to also follow. I'm so glad you said that. Thank you.
So, Tom, I guess you must be onto something, because, at the end, Gallup noted that it was a symptom of poor management, the quiet quitting part. And so, I think that's an interesting way to kind of end that segment. So we're getting towards the end of our time. And I would just like to, we've talked about a lot of different things tonight, and, shared some great insights. I know I've learned some things, but if you'd like to share some sort of final thoughts about, I don't know, whatever you think is coming next, I would love to hear. So Ed, do you?
Uh,
Oh,
I think I'm having some difficulty with my bandwidth here. But I guess what I would say is, uh, oh, folks, please understand that most employers, I think, are going to be working in a hybrid model. They're not. A lot of them are not going to be returning to 100% on-site, and I think a lot of them, as Tom has explained on multiple occasions during this call tonight, has explained that remote may not be the future for a lot of fully remote. I mean, may not be the future for most organizations. So when you're pursuing an opportunity and they say it's remote, ask them, what does that actually mean? Because that can mean a host of things. Like in my organization, if I say hybrid, my leaders think it means 1 to 2 days a week on site. And that is not the same standard as every other organization uses. Get clarity.
Okay. Yeah, that important to know. Just like titles, right? Companies have different it means different things, different companies. So Tom, you want to go next and we'll let Mary round us out at the end.
Yeah, I had this happen twice over the flexibility. It needs to be part of the process. But I had two clients that moved. One moved to the Bahamas. One moved to I forgot where they moved, but the company they got hired by the company. They moved because it was 100% remote, but the company didn't have security, would not support security in those countries or something. So a lot of people think, oh, I could do my job, I could do it from anywhere. Let me move anywhere. So understand what you're getting into. Be flexible, because we're all shifting into a new era, and remote. Remote, 100% remote, I don't think it's going to last. I could be totally wrong. I don't think it's healthy, personally, mentally. So I think the hybrid is going to be the way it's going to be. But like Ed said, whether it's 2 to 3 or 4 days at home in the office, it's going to be different for every company. But be flexible. Be flexible with what's going on.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll say that, just the last few years of work have been interesting for HR people, for leaders, for everyone really participating in it. I would say, like, specific for leadership, like just even hearing this now, like some places will be hybrid, some places will not be. It's like completely come back to work or fully remote. And the leaders really need to get it in front of it. I mean, they really got to lead their organizations in the way that's, acceptable and appropriate for their workforce. I really feel that just from a leadership standpoint, that's got to change just in terms of including people in the decision making, the voices, the thought process, and setting policies. A lot of times it's the same kind of people, or it's just people with power. And I really feel, you see a little bit of voices from all levels, but I don't know. I just feel like there's a better need to have more people actively involved to formulate policies that really will be more agile enough than to, be talking about like, oh, what do we do now? So I don't know. I just feel like, it's exciting time, I think, but at the same time, it's also like, what's going to happen? I don't know, so like, I feel all of this, just more participation from different voices in the workforce around a lot of these issues will be really helpful.
Well, I thank you so much. And thank you, Ed and Tom and Mary, for joining me tonight. I'm always so grateful when the smart people I invite say yes. So thank you so much. I'm Annette Richmond, and I will see you on the next episode of the Trend Talk Show.